Remember Kenny Rogers? The man with that unmistakable voice, the silver beard, the warm smile, and the songs that could make the whole world stop and feel. He wasn't just a country music icon, he was a storyteller whose lyrics carved deep into the soul. With over 100 million records sold, countless awards, and a global fanbase, Kenny's legacy seemed like a dream written in gold. But behind the curtain of fame was a man burdened by heartbreak, 5 marriages, strained friendships, and a childhood shadowed by hardship. His life, much like his music, was filled with pain, redemption, and quiet resilience. And in his final chapter, far from the glare of the spotlight, he fought a silent battle with illness. This is the story of Kenny Rogers, not just the legend, but the man. A journey of soaring highs, devastating lows, and the quiet, heartbreaking way his song came to an end. Kenny Rogers was the 4th of 8 children, raised in a world where survival came before dreams. His mother, Lucille, worked long shifts as a nurse's assistant, while his father, Edward, was a carpenter, often unemployed, often struggling. The Rogers family lived in government housing meant for white families, built over neighborhoods once occupied by people of color. Kenny would later say, "We were broke," and he meant it. Life was hard, but they endured. Kenny attended Wharton Elementary, George Washington Junior High, and eventually graduated from Jefferson Davis High School in 1956, a monumental achievement for someone in his position. "I was the first person in my family, as far back as we know, to graduate from high school," he said on the Phil Donahue Show. He swept floors in a hat shop for just $9 a week, worked as a busboy at the Rice Hotel, and sang whenever he got the chance. In 1949, he won a local talent show at the Texan Theater, a spark that hinted at something greater. But behind the early whispers of fame was a boy who knew real hunger, not always starving, but often nutritionally deprived. Peanut butter sandwiches were sometimes all the family had. Yet Kenny never complained. "Most kids around me were going through the same thing," he recalled. His humble beginnings were carved into the foundation of who he was, and those who knew him never forgot it. Kenny Rogers grew up in Houston's 4th Ward, a neighborhood where hardship was a constant and trouble was never far. His brother Roy once said, "We were poor, there's no doubt about that," while his sister Sandy added, "We struggled, but we had faith we'd make it through." Faith, in many ways, was the glue that held the Rogers family together. It kept them going through long nights and hard winters. But beyond the struggle, there was community, people who showed kindness when it mattered most. Kenny never forgot that. Decades later, after fame had found him, he learned that a former neighbor was down on her luck and couldn't afford a $600 car repair. Kenny didn't just cover the bill, he sent her $20,000 and a handwritten note that read, "Thank you for helping me pay my rent years ago." It was never just about the money for Kenny, it was about honoring the people and moments that shaped him. That humility, that unwavering loyalty to his roots, made fans love him even more. It's also what bonded him so deeply with Dolly Parton. Both came from pain, poverty, and perseverance, and instead of letting those things define them, they used them as fuel. Their friendship wasn't just legendary, it was real. And through it all, Kenny stayed grounded, never once pretending he was above anyone. That was the magic of the man behind the music. They were deeply connected because they both knew what it was like to struggle. The father didn't understand that Kenny's childhood wasn't just poor, his father, Edward, struggled with alcohol. In his 2012 book Luck or Something Like It, Kenny talked openly about this, saying that he never drank alcohol himself because he was afraid of becoming like his father. He thought that addiction might run in the family, which kept him from drinking his whole life, even with all of his problems. Kenny was very successful, but there was one thing that bothered him: "I never really got to know why my dad drank." He was an alcoholic, but at that time, after World War II, a lot of people were unemployed and ended up drinking. He couldn't really support his family, and I think it just broke him down. "It breaks my heart that I didn't know that before he died that regret stayed with him." Instead of letting it destroy him, Kenny used it to help others. He took up photography as a hobby to keep himself busy between tours, and he used his fame to help others. He didn't judge people who were struggling with addiction because he had seen it too closely. His music, his friendships, and even his silence during hard times all came from these deep wounds. But those wounds also helped him connect with fans from all walks of life, from jazz clubs to psychedelic hits. Kenny Rogers started chasing his music dreams in the late 1950s. At first, it was small steps. In 1957, his solo song, That Crazy Feeling, got some attention, but when the buzz died down, he didn't give up. The Bobby Doyle Three was a jazz group that had loyal fans and often played at clubs. The group even got a deal with Columbia Records, but it didn't last forever. They broke up in 1965. After that, Kenny tried again. In 1966, he recorded a solo song called Here's That Rainy Day with Mercury Records, but it didn't do well either. During this time, he also worked behind the scenes writing, producing, and playing music for artists like Mickey Gilley and Eddie Arnold. In 1966, he tried again for fame by joining a folk group. Kenny sang and played bass in a band called the New Christy Minstrels, but they weren't having the success Kenny was hoping for, so in 1967 he and 3 other members, Mike Settle, Terry Williams, and Thelma Camacho, decided to leave. They started a new band called The First Edition, and later Kinvasi joined them. This was Kenny's big break. Their hit song, Just Dropped In to See What Condition My Condition Was In, became a big hit. The song had a crazy psychedelic sound, and Kenny's deep voice made it memorable. Years later in the movie The Big Lebowski, but this was just the start. After the First Edition's success, Kenny slowly became the face of the band with songs like Ruby Don't Take Your Love to Town and Reuben James. The group started leaning more toward country music, but in 1975 or 1976, they broke up. Kenny decided it was time to go solo again, which wasn't easy because he was already in his late 30s, and record companies kept turning him down because they said he was too old for country music. Rejection hurt, but Kenny didn't let it stop him. At one point, he was performing at a small lounge in Las Vegas with only 600 seats. That's when Steve Wynn, who had booked him, told him something shocking. He would fire him not because he wasn't good, but because Kenny had the talent to go much further. He wanted Kenny to chase bigger dreams. Kenny finally got his big break as a solo artist thanks to producer Larry Butler. They made the song Lucille, which was a huge hit, and Kenny even won a Grammy for it. He thanked Butler in his Grammy speech, knowing that he might not have made it without him. This win led to even more hits, and Kenny never looked back. His voice crossed every line after Lucille. Kenny Rogers became a huge star in both country and pop music. He had more than 60 top 40 hits, and his songs Lady and Islands in the Stream both went to #1. The second was a duet with Dolly Parton, and it became one of the most loved songs of all time. His 1978 hit, The Gambler, became his signature song. The song won him another Grammy and was so popular that it inspired a whole series of TV movies. He played the lead role in Kenny Rogers as the Gambler, which earned him an Emmy nomination. Fans couldn't get enough of the character, and the song's message stuck with them forever. Kenny's albums The Gambler and Kenny were even named one of the 200 most influential country albums of all time, and in 1986, USA Today and People magazines polled fans to choose their favorite singer of all time. But he wasn't just a singer. He was in movies and TV shows like Six Pack, The McShane Series, and others. He also started his own business and co-founded a restaurant chain with former KFC CEO John White Brown Jr. The U.S. locations closed, but the chain stayed popular in Asia. Kenny also kept making music. In 2006, he released the album Water and Bridges. The song, I Can Unlock You, did well on the charts, and the album itself hit the top 5 in country sales and the Billboard 200. Even in his later years, Kenny stayed busy. After a career spanning more than 60 years, Kenny Rogers did it all with heart. From rock and roll to jazz to country to pop, he did it all. But behind the fame and the cheers, Kenny also faced heartbreak. One of the worst days of his life was when he lost a close friend. Kenny Rogers and Doy West were more than just musical partners, they were close friends in real life. Fans loved their chemistry on stage, but they also had a close relationship off stage. Doy went through a lot in the early 1990s, going through a divorce and then bankruptcy while trying to rebuild her life and career. Kenny was there for her and even gave her a car to help her get around. On August 31, 1991, she was driving that same car to the Grand Ole Opry when something went wrong and it broke down on the way there. Doy called Kenny and told him what happened. Asked a neighbor for help, and he picked her up. But as he rushed to the venue, he lost control and crashed into a freeway divider. Dovey was badly hurt, she had serious internal injuries and had to have several surgeries, but she didn't make it. She died just days after the crash. Kenny never forgot about her. In an interview with Rolling Stone in 2014, he said that one of his biggest goals was to see Doy West properly honored for her music. He wanted her in the Country Music Hall of Fame. 4 years later, in 2018, her dream came true. Kenny Rogers posted a touching message on Facebook congratulating his late friend, the late, great Doy West. It was his way of saying goodbye and making sure everyone remembered her. But loss wasn't the only problem Kenny had in the later years of his life. He also had to fight for what he earned. Even after decades of making hit songs, Kenny Rogers had to fight for money that was rightfully his. In 2012, he took Capitol Records to court because he thought the company owed him money from digital music sales and downloads of his own songs. Back then, music was sold online through services like iTunes. Kenny and other artists said they should have gotten 50% of the profits from digital sales, but that wasn't happening. Kenny said Capitol Records hadn't paid him what they were supposed to. He said the company had shorted him by about $400,000 from digital downloads. This wasn't just his fight, the Allman Brothers, Rob Zombie, and Sister Sledge all filed lawsuits for the same reason. Together, their cases showed a big problem. It was a problem in the music business. Experts said artists were missing out on billions of dollars that they had earned and deserved. The problem wasn't fully fixed in 2020. A UK law expert said that while streaming companies made over $1 billion in just 1 year, 8 out of 10 artists were getting paid less than $250 a year. Kenny Rogers' court battle showed that even legends have to fight to be treated fairly. He had a very special pet goat named Smitty at his estate in Colbert, which was called Beaver Dam Farms. He got Smitty from a friend in 2008, and it wasn't just a fun addition to the farm, this goat became something much more personal. Kenny once said that Smitty was his center. The little goat helped him stay calm, especially after long and tiring tours. For a man who was used to bright lights and loud applause, this small animal gave him something to ground himself. After years of performing, staying calm became more important than ever. But while many things in Kenny's personal life were hard, including love, regret, and 5 marriages. He was married 5 times and had 5 children. His first marriage was to Janice Gordon in 1958, and they had a daughter named Carol Lynn. That marriage ended in 1960, just months after Kenny married his second wife Jean, but that too ended quickly in 1963. In 1964, he married Margot Anderson, and they had 1 child before getting divorced in 1975. His 4th marriage was to actress Marianne Gordon, who he married in 1977 and had a son named Christopher, but the marriage ended in 1993 as well. Kenny's 5th and final marriage was to Wanda Miller in 1997. They had twin sons and were married until his death. In his 2012 autobiography Luck or Something Like It, Kenny didn't make excuses for his failed marriages. He said, "When I became driven and selfish, I was so intent to follow my life that it cost me. I don't blame the women I married for the marriages falling apart, I blame myself and my chosen field of music," he also said. His marriage to Marianne Gordon ended in a sad note. She once said that even though Kenny was fully focused on her, something inside him was unsettled. He felt like his career was slipping, he felt this craving, he said he felt like he was having a midlife crisis. She told Closer Weekly that their divorce wasn't just emotional, it cost her money. Marianne reportedly got around $60,000 million in the settlement. Despite these heartbreaks, Kenny found true love with Wanda, but their relationship was questioned by the public and his older father felt a different kind of regret. When Kenny married Wanda Miller, she was 28 years younger than him and her parents were only 2 years younger than Kenny. At first, they didn't like the relationship, but over time, things changed, and Kenny said, "She is truly my soulmate." By the time he retired in 2015, Kenny was 77 years old and his sons were only 11 years old. It was hard to leave the spotlight, but his health and his family made it clear. He told the Tennessean that his mobility was getting worse and that he wanted to spend more time with his kids. He also said that he and Wanda had agreed not to have children at first, but when she turned 31, she changed her mind. Kenny said he agreed because he didn't want her to regret the relationship or the life they had together. Deep down, he was worried about one thing: age. "Someone will be talking about his or her child going to college, and it breaks my heart," he said. "That's why I didn't want children again. I knew I wouldn't be there at the prime of their lives." Kenny had more children from previous marriages, and he also felt guilty about those. He once said that raising his twin boys was his best job, but he felt like he had missed too much with his older children. His daughter Carol Lynn was born when he was only 19. He married her mother after finding out she was pregnant, but after the divorce he stepped back so he wouldn't get in the way of her relationship with her stepfather. He also had a rough time with his son Kenny Rogers Jr. from his third marriage to Christopher, his son from Marianne. Things got better after the divorce, though, and Kenny promised to always be his son's father, even if they didn't get to see each other very often. One story says it all: "I have 2 older boys and I didn't get to spend this time with them, and I resent it." Seeing how happy his younger boys were to have him there at football games is exactly what a parent wants to be a part of as much as possible. However, not all of Kenny's choices turned out the way he had hoped. For example, his business dream didn't last. In 1991, Kenny tried something new. He opened a restaurant with the former CEO of KFC. The idea was simple: serve rotisserie chicken and corn muffins instead of fried food. It seemed like a good plan. The chain even got a shout-out on the hit show Seinfeld, but things didn't go as planned. Just 1 year after opening, the business faced a huge problem. Another company sued for $10 million, saying the idea had been stolen. Kenny's brand ended up buying out the smaller company, but by then, other fast food chains had already moved in. The pressure was too much for the business to handle, and in 1998, Kenny Rogers Rowers went bankrupt. Kenny walked away from the brand, but the restaurants still. Even now, there are still about 200 locations, but they're not in the US, they're in Southeast Asia. So, even though Kenny was famous for his voice, not all of his activities outside of music were successful. His final tour was cut short. Kenny Rogers had a long and amazing career. He sang for more than 50 years and gave the world unforgettable songs like "Lucille Lady" and "The Gambler." But in his later years, his health started to get worse, and in 2018 during the last part of his farewell tour, he had to stop performing because of it. Many people online started to talk about what might be wrong with him. The rumors got so big that Kenny's team had to put out a public statement in which they said he had gone to a hospital in Georgia because he was dehydrated. It wasn't as serious as people thought. In fact, the message was full of hope. One line read, "He plans on sticking around through the years to come." That hope didn't last long, though. 10 months later, on March 20, 2020, Kenny Rogers died. He was 81 years old. His family said he died peacefully at home with hospice care, surrounded by loved ones. His wife Wanda Miller and 5 children were with him. The next day, the family released a statement saying, "The Rogers family is sad to announce that Kenny Rogers passed away last night at 10:25 p.m. Rogers died peacefully at home of natural causes." Because of the pandemic emergency at the time, his family couldn't have a big public funeral. Instead, they said they would have a small private service and hoped to celebrate Kenny's life with his fans later. Even though he was gone, his music and legacy lived on, as did the love from his family and his sister Sandy Rogers' stories and sweet memories. He changed into Sincerely Gone to honor him. She helped make a special 2-hour documentary on a Andy titled biography Kenny Rogers. It changed into filmed before he died and showed uncommon pictures from his 2017 farewell concerts. The display additionally featured interviews with folks that knew him first-rate, which includes Dolly Parton. Whilst Sandy was requested why she agreed to be part of the documentary, she stated, "I would do something for him. He has completed a lot for me personally and my circle of relatives." She stated their own family changed into raised to help each other, so she did not think 2 times Sandy and her twin brother had been much more youthful than Kenny, so that they didn't get to develop up very closely with him. However, they'd some humorous memories. She recalled, "I simply take into account him going to the kitchen, getting a jug of milk and ingesting out of it." She laughed. They got to recognize him higher at some point of their spring smash visits to Las Vegas. Kenny could invite them over and they might get to see him no longer just as a singer, however as a brother. One in all her favored memories become going to his concert at Sam Houston Kingdom University. Kenny organized for a Greyhound bus to choose them up from their residence. Sandy was in junior high at the time. She remembered how surprised she changed into at the group. "We knew he could sing, but we had no concept how simply so many human beings would come to listen him," she stated. On the give-up of that live performance, something humorous took place. While Kenny was bowing to the target market, their father walked onto the degree and started out bowing too. Kenny had to tell him, "Dad, this is my show." Sandy said it became one of those moments they constantly laughed. Approximately later there was some other sweet memory too. While Kenny allows Sandy and her dual do history vocals in one of his recording sessions, "We had been even suggesting a way to make the song higher," she joked. Kenny laughed and told them, "I can't believe you've best been in right here for half hour and you are already soliciting for royalties." It became an inner joke between them for years, family repute and the people who meant the maximum. Sandy said that Kenny's achievement opened many doorways for his or her family. They got to travel, meet well-known people and go to locations they by no means dreamed of, all due to him. She shared one tale approximately how Di West, Kenny's longtime friend and track partner, could visit their mom in the USA. Mama loved her and would take her fishing, she said. However, Di always confirmed up carrying excessive heels. Mama used to mention, "You cannot do that, you need to put on other footwear." Simplest doy, she laughed, might wear heels to go fishing. Sandy additionally pointed out Kenny's most famous tune, The Gambler. She idea it turned into a laugh, an effective track. She shared that a disc jockey as soon as said, "I have never recognized a singer who could take one track and make 5 movies out of it." However, her preferred tale changed into approximately Lucille, their mother's name become Lucille, and while Kenny first played the song for Sandy she said, "Oh, that doesn't sound right to me. I do not think you may do properly with that." Later the tune made $20 million. Sandy laughed and said, "So here I'm consuming crow." Toward the give-up, Kenny often pointed out retiring. He would say, "I am going to retire next 12 months. But when the year got here he did not stop. Sandy believed he failed to need to retire. He simply knew he should. He desired to spend time with Wanda and their boys during the A&E filming. Sandy stated he became nonetheless doing nicely. He even joked along with her approximately her new hair shade, saying, "Why failed to you do it earlier then?" Even in his very last days Kenny remained type considerate and humorous. A circle of relatives as tribute to the man in the back of the tune. 12 months after Kenny Rogers exceeded away, his circle of relatives shared an emotional message with enthusiasts. On March 20, 2021 they published a declaration on social media signed with the aid of the Rogers' own family and Team KR. They thanked each person for their assist at some stage in a hard year without him. "It's so tough to believe it has been a year on the grounds that Kenny left us," the message started out. They admitted that some days were harder than others, but the love and kind words from fans helped them get through it. "Manner a lot to us they brought," they said. The recollections of Kenny had added each tears and laughter. His presence became nonetheless felt deeply. "We recognize we are able to in no way stop missing him and will all the time rejoice the man or woman he was and his first-rate musical legacy." They ended the message with Desire announcing, "We will all take some consolation in understanding the song lives on." Then they introduced the #MusicMan. That equal year the 2021 Grammy Awards additionally commemorated Kenny at some stage in the in memoriam phase. Lionel Richie paid tribute by using Singing Woman, the ballad he had written for his near pal. Different artists like Bruno Mars, Anderson .Percent and Brandy Carroll additionally done to honor the various tune legends who had surpassed after Kenny's dying in 2020. Richie had shared vintage images of their time together on stage. He wrote, "Nowadays I misplaced One in every of my closest pals, so much laughter, so many adventures to don't forget my coronary heart is damaged. What do you consider Kenny Rogers' adventure? Which Kenny Rogers music holds a unique place in your coronary heart, and why? Share your mind inside the comments beneath, and do not forget to hit like, subscribe and live tune for more extremely good stories from Hollywood's charming history. See you next time.